Hello and welcome to Wiland Webinars. Thank you for all being here today as we discuss Wiland's AI-powered solution that helps fundraisers boost response rates and realize considerable savings in the direct mail campaigns. I'd like to introduce the nonprofit experts who will be participating today. And first, I'd like to welcome our newest member of our leadership team here at Wiland, who joined us in January. Jen Honadell, Wiland's Senior Vice President of Client Success. And next, Olivia Smith, Vice President of Solutions and Innovation here at Wiland. She joined my group earlier this year and has over a decade of hands-on Wiland experience, having led a client success team. And I'm Roger Hiyama, Wiland's Executive Vice President, Solutions and Innovation. My team's role is to help leverage our vast data resources to help improve the fundraising success of our nonprofit clients. So before we get started, I do have a few housekeeping items to cover. So first of all, the webinar is being recorded, and you should all receive a link to that recording about 24 hours after today. And also at the end of our webinar, you'll be given an opportunity to download a copy of this presentation and related materials. Our chat today is private, but I'll be monitoring to look for comments and passing your questions on to our panel. And if we're unable to answer your question during the webinar today, we'll make sure that one of us gets back to you to make sure that you get the information that you were looking for. If you have any technical problems seeing or hearing any of the presenters, we would probably recommend refreshing your browser or just exiting and jumping back in. But you should be able, if you do get kicked out, you should be able to rejoin immediately. So with all of that administrative stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. Jen, lead us away.
Thank you, Roger. I'm excited to be here at Wiland, and I'm excited to be talking about Wiland's reimagined post-merge optimization product utilizing AI technology. As data partners, we're always hearing the challenges our clients and our partners are facing and discussing ways that Wiland can help them. More often than not, these are usually the top ones we hear: declining number and size of donations, shrinking files, response rates on the decline, the rising mail costs, especially with postage and paper the last few years, flat or decreasing budgets. We want to know if you're facing some of these challenges as well. And we're going to put up a poll and ask that you let us know what are your top 1 or 2 challenges in achieving your clients' goals today. So if you could answer the poll, and then, there it is. If everybody could pick 1 or 2, I'd appreciate it. And we'll give you a couple minutes to answer. All right, are we almost ready for the final results? The poll. So the poll is just the 5 questions we specifically just went through. So it looks like 58% of you are shrinking inactive donor files, and 49% decreasing response rates. So those are our top 2. Rising mailing costs, which is one of the things we're looking to really cover today in this webinar. Declining number of size donations, and then only at 15% stagnant but fundraising budgets. Okay. So really today we're going to be talking, go ahead, Roger, sorry.
Yeah, so that last one is actually very encouraging because, the ones that popped up at the top, the shrinking donor files, that's been the thing that I've heard most frequently. And when we've done analysis and looked across really the nonprofit landscape, the number of donors is down about 10% year over year. And although a lot of organizations had that big COVID bump where we were able to acquire a lot of new donors during the first 18 months of COVID, since then, everybody's been on a big decline. But in order to really replenish those lapsed donors and get your donor file growing again, it will mean either increased fundraising budgets or some special fund. So I'm encouraged that that last item there was not as big of an issue. I had a meeting earlier this year with with one of our clients, and they had mentioned that their board had allocated an additional $1 million in expenses to really tackle the acquisition challenges.
Thank you, Roger. Next slide, please. We know that we can't change the cost of paper or postage, and it's been increasing every few months. Therefore, the cost of prospecting names has to be the most cost-effective level it can be. Not every prospect is created equal. Even when a list or model has a strong cost to acquire, there can still be some individual bad names or prospects being obtained at higher cost to acquire. Our goal is to eliminate the bad names and create better ROI and lower cost to acquire for your new donors. Typically, when we talk to clients about what they are looking for, we are always told both response rate and average gift. This AI solution utilizes a combination of response rate and average gift to determine who to drop from the campaign. That being said, it's important to share your overall KPIs with your rep before any modeling, so we know what you're looking for. So what is our post-merge optimization? It's really it's a fast, usually within 48 hours post-merge, you send us your net file, and it's a proven solution. And Olivia will walk through some of how we say it's proven for saving fundraising dollars while achieving higher performer acquisition campaigns. So what we'll do is use an AI-driven predictive model to rank and score from best to least names. And what are you empowered to do? You're going to mail only the people most likely to give and give at the level you want them to give at. We're going to remove the lowest performing names from your mailings and those that are unlikely to respond to who and represent wasted spend with that postage and paper. So what happens when you remove the lowest performing names? We all know we're going to gain significant savings. You can reinvest it in more profitable audiences. You can get higher response rate. You're going to see an immediate cost savings, which is interesting, number 3 of the poll results. And we're going to eliminate marketing waste. And actually, we're going to shoot this over to Olivia to talk about how we do it.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone being here today and giving us your time. Post-merge optimization is not new as a technique. Many of our clients already use it. And so you may be well familiar with the process. But for a few that may have joined us today that have not, or this is not exactly the details that they work in, I'll briefly explain that. The first thing is you have to have, obviously, your list ordered, you go through the merge, and now you're about ready to go into the mail. But before you do, the goal here is to send the file to us. And like Jennifer said, we load this and process everything within 48 hours. Once that file is loaded, we apply our AI-enabled predictive modeling, leveraging our vast donor data to rank the names. And, Jen mentioned that when we talk with clients and we say, so what's your metric? What is it you're looking for? They'll say, if you say response or gift, they'll say, well, both, right? We want our cake and eat it too, so to speak. But when we look at actual models and list plans, there are models that optimize and work towards a focus on gift and other models that have a focus on response. Because if we only modeled on both response and gift, well, that's a small number of people who meet both those criteria, giving both large gifts and giving frequently in terms of high response. So we want to make sure we get all parts of the spectrum, and a good list plan is in fact a blend of all of those. But at the end of the day, even though we may have good a list plan, as Jen said, there are still individual names within each of those list sources that are not going to provide either good response or good gift. And that's what PMO means. That's where post-merge optimization, powered by Wiland AI, this model seeks to find the worst of both of those metrics. And so once we've done the scoring, we rank the names from top to bottom, and to retain your best donors and drop potentially those names that were on good lists that have a good net cost to acquire as a list, but as an individual, they are actually poor performers. And so the end result is, of course, you put the good names in the mail and you take the cost of what you would have spent on those poor names and redirect those savings to a number of other options. So why should you believe that this is true? Well, we've done a lot of work with our predictive solutions department, and we have in fact created custom PMO models for many of our clients. We've been at work at this and back testing it. And I'd like to show you a post-merge optimization savings calculator in order to show how this plays out in real life. So this calculator, I know it has a lot of numbers on it, so let me turn your focus to this upper left-hand side where it says campaign details. This is where we make some assumptions. Of course, with actual data from the client, we can populate that correctly for them. But in this mail file of about 800,000 names, we had a cost per piece without list at 42 cents a piece, an average list cost of $75 a thousand, 7.5 cents. We have to figure in the cost for optimization, which is 4 cents a piece on which applies only to names dropped. And then we make an assumption of 12 campaigns a year, this client mailing all 12 months. So the PMO model ranks in 40 segments. And what we're seeing on the screen here is just the bottom section from 30 to 40. If you had actually expanded the entire thing, you would see how linear the model is. And you can even see that even in the quarter portion that we're showing. And the goal here is to look at, well, what was the performance of names in this file based against the PMO model? And so what's key here is that net per donor column. Notice that segments 37, 38, 39, and 40, which are highlighted, are well over $100 net per donor. Well, with an average gift of $28.94, that is in fact probably too costly. Certainly segment 40 at $191 is too costly, and being able to get the return on investment on this one is either so far out or not even possible. And so these are names that, while coming from good lists, in and of themselves perform poorly. The other interesting thing is look at the response index and the average gift index. This is what I was saying about the PMO model being this AI-driven technology is really able to find the worst of response and the worst of gift. In this case, they are all indexing at, certainly in response, down at 25, 27. We have a couple of gifts that are at half of the average gift, but certainly these names are dragging down the overall campaign. So what the calculator does is it tells us, well, what our savings would be. So in this case, those 4 segments represent 50,000 names roughly at about 6.4% of the file. So when we translate in our assumptions on those costs, what it means is that by not mailing those 50,000 names, we are saving over $21,000 in true paper printing postage. We have some sunk list costs, of course, because those 50,000 names came from lists of around $3,800, unless you have some net name arrangements that those can be applied to. And then the Wiland costs for identifying these individuals at $2,026. Again, that's 4 cents a name, and that is only on the names dropped. It's not a run charge across the file. So net, even after dropping the costs of the sunk costs on the list and the PMO costs, we're still ahead of the game at $15,000 on that one campaign. Assuming this was done every single month to find and weed out those individual names that won't perform. In this client's case, that's $187,000 worth of savings that could be applied elsewhere. But that's not all, because you've noticed probably this row at the very bottom of our calculator, which are the no score results. There's only 12,286, but oh boy, those 12,286 were not very productive at a cost to acquire of 165. No score records doesn't mean that we didn't look at them. We did, but we did not find enough intelligence on that name in order to rank it and give it a score. So that's why we said, well, we don't know if these are good or not good. We just don't know enough. And in most cases, I will say these are poor names, but not always. There are some clients that we've seen, whatever source it is that these are various, they might be coming back attributed to, they actually may still be cost-effective names. So again, our calculator, our test here in this model is telling us that this client's no score names are not valuable. And when we add that to the overall picture, obviously that jumps their annual savings up to $250,000 and about 8% of the file that could be swapped out or those savings utilized elsewhere. So this is a very typical sized campaign. But let's jump it up and say, well, what about people who mail even more, who have more access to lists, maybe because their volumes are higher? So the next group that I'm going to show you is a client of about 2 million names in a campaign. Slightly lower cost to acquire, cost in the mail at 35 cents. The others remaining stable in terms of list cost and post-merge optimization cost. Interestingly enough, notice the percentage of names in this first group is at 9%, because just like the others, we have names in the bottom segments more, both in terms of quantity, but still same percentage of their overall 2 million piece mailing. Now we're looking at segments 35 to 40, because everything here is essentially $500 and above. And look at segment 40 at 2,420. There were all of 3 responders to that group. So again, same problem of not being very cost effective. Now this client may say that segment 30 at 276 is still pricey, but they're willing maybe to go to that cost to acquire. These are going to be individual decisions that are made by client. But what is interesting on this campaign is the fact that the indexes are slightly different. Here, they're all very low on the response side, but there are a couple that are at index average or slightly above index average. Now, what we don't know, without doing some deeper dive here, is was there a single outlier gift that may have come in that drove that all up, or was it everyone in the group that on average was now giving $46 instead of $52? Even though that's a nicer gift, as is the 60, we still are facing a $500 cost to acquire. So the question has to be had, even with that nice a gift, can we afford to bring that donor on board, given their how long it will take to recoup? In this particular client's case, because of the fact that we're dropping 9% of that file with 177,000 names, and the fact that their costs on it are obviously much higher because of volume, even though there's $62,000 on the mail costs, now dropping list and merge costs, we're at $41,000 a campaign. That's real money. And then do that again another time, 12 times a year, and you're talking $500,000. Same issue here on the no score records. Here we had 59,000 names, proportionally also higher, but again, a 577. So if we add those to the group, we go well over $500,000 in savings for this client that they could be doing potentially something else with. And that's really what we're trying to share here today, is that there are bad names in every good list and we can find them. And by doing so, we're going to provide savings to the organization. And what could you do with $500,000 if you were that organization? You could redeploy it to better, higher performing audiences. And for some clients, they do that by doing balance. But another and very popular move, especially of the last couple of years, is to pair the direct mail campaigns with digital co-targeting. Rather than spending, very precious direct mail dollars on poor performing names, reallocate that money to the good names that are getting one shot in the direct mail mailbox, but then could be paired with multiple impressions online with digital co-targeting. And we certainly have had many clients have seen great success with that sort of 1-2 multi-punch with the digital impressions. Or maybe that $500,000 becomes an opportunity to go test another channel like CTV or other things that you were looking at doing. Or last, invest it back in direct mail by testing new package types and offers. Certainly, with all of the direct mail costs that have been increasing, people have been cutting back testing. They've even had to cut back quantity just to be able to meet the budget. So tests have gone out the window to unless they've been testing to find a cheaper package. That seems to be what has been the biggest driver of tests, is get that direct mail cost down. So that's really the message here, is that there's using artificial intelligence, we have the ability through a PMO model to really find the bottom of the file, even a well-planned file. And that only means upside for our clients in finding savings that they can repurpose elsewhere. So that being said, let me toss it back to Roger for any questions and answers that you might have.
Well, thanks everybody for dropping questions in the chat. We're going to go to full screen here. Can you tell us how this differs from any optimization work we're currently doing? Olivia, you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, certainly. Yes, many of our clients are currently optimizing using a number of models, depending on the client. Might be using their best model, might be using one they specifically have held over for that process. But after months and months of working with our predictive solutions team, we have determined internally that it is our AI-powered solutions that have done the best in order to determine the bottom. So the PMO models that have been built, and we have in fact built several for clients in anticipation of this timing, and that will be ready to launch for them, is really meant to find the bottom, as we showed in that index. Low gift and low response in almost all cases. And my suggestion is that you work with your client success director to determine, if you are going to do balance, that what's the best model to replace those names with that identifies the metric that you're most chasing.
Okay. So here is one question. It says, can you clarify if we need to supply you an outside file, and or are we still able to buy a file, data/potential donor names from Wiland, and then run it through the AI predictive model? So the answer to this question, I think, is that our with the post-merge optimization, the anticipation is that you would run your normal merge purge process, and out of that merge purge process, you end up with a net file. You would then post that to Wiland, and we would go ahead and process that file through our post-merge optimization model. At that point, we would identify number of names by segment, and then allow you to identify which segments that you would want to drop. So as part of this question, are we still able to buy a file, data potential donor names from Wiland? Yes, that could be done either upfront, as most of our clients normally do, and or it could be done post after the optimization process. So Olivia kind of mentioned earlier the concept of a balance names. And generally what will happen is we'll run an optimization, identify the names for drop, and then the goal for the client would be to take those savings and either use it in the current merge, i.e. find better names, balance names, or take that savings and move it to your next campaign, or move it into other ways of improving your fundraising. We were on a call earlier this year with a client, and they mentioned that one of their concerns, because of some of the challenges in the second, really third quarter third and fourth quarter of 2024 was they were really going to try to hold off on doing testing of direct mail packages. And when I heard that, I'm like, wow, we really have a serious problem if clients are concerned about having enough money and volume to be able to still do testing. And I truly think that by running optimization, it will find you a sizable chunk of money where you can then deploy it in any way you need, including doing more testing on packages. Here's another question. What if I'm already using another vendor for post-merge optimization? Jennifer, you want to tackle that one?
Absolutely. As Olivia had mentioned, we actually did some pre-work already on some of our clients, and we did analysis over 100 campaigns, and almost in every instance, it made sense to use the AI-powered model. We even noticed that some people probably were already being optimized, and we still found names that we would say to drop. So it's definitely worth exploring. And we can build new models within 2 weeks. But as we said, it takes 48 hours after that model is built to process the post-merge. And yeah, so good.
And I would also say, you know, as part of the processes that we were building out a number of these custom optimization models, we saw a handful where it really doesn't make sense to do additional optimization. And
that is true.
In those cases, we would come back to you and we would say, you're already doing a really good job, don't do it. But if we end up finding a lot of names that we can optimize, we'll come to you and say, you know, maybe this is a better alternative to what you're currently doing. But if it isn't going to work for you, I think, you know, one of the things, having been at Wiland now for so long and having started my career with Phil, he always had this guiding principle was, if it's not good for the customer, then it can't be good for Wiland. And, you know, even though we had a retirement party a couple of weeks ago in Colorado for Phil, where we got to really honor him, I can tell you that that enduring principle will continue forever. So thanks for the question.
I would like to just, it's one of the reasons why I joined Wiland, because of that guiding principle, but I just heard a couple of people pop up how long. So 48 hours is how long it takes once we have the net file. So sorry, Roger.
Good. So here's another question. Can you model on anything other than response rate and average gift? It came up with a client recently that they were interested in modeling on donors most likely to retain, given their history of giving to the organization's long term. So my answer for this question is, we can really model on virtually anything you want to. So when we're modeling normally to provide prospect audiences, we have different dependent variables that we're modeling for. However, in the case of the PMO models, and what makes them so unique is we're building models to really identify the bottom, right? We want to find the worst names where we can, with high confidence, say, don't mail this person. And we can show you the validation and the model set builds to kind of convince you up front that your 3 prior mailings segments, you know, 30x through 40 just don't make sense. And so that's the way we deal with the optimization. But certainly when we work with clients, we build custom models for a variety of different things, including sustainers, telemarketing sustainers, plan giving, et cetera, et cetera. But in the case of this particular product, it's really intended to identify the bottom.
Hey, Roger, if I could piggyback on that, because I did see something in the chat from someone who asked, do we find success using the same model on different offers and creative for a client? And actually, we build different models. We've had a couple that were, as I said, we're doing them ahead of time on clients where we know they have different programs. So they have a premium program and a non-premium program. So we've built separate models for that as well. They also have different cost factors involved. So, if you're doing a high velocity package that's costing $2, $3, your metrics are going to be very different. Your response rate is going to be significantly higher. And so we have done that also as well. And so that also is a very collaborative thing that the client success director is going to work with the client on how they want that to be modeled, or do they want to do a blended model essentially? But yeah, all of which is possible. And we are finding that when we've done separate packages like that, that we do see different results in terms of the volume to be dropped at the bottom. So yes, because it's all custom for the client. It's not one PMO model for everybody. Mm-hmm.
So there were a couple of questions similar to this one in the chat. Can post-merge optimization be conducted on the entire net file or only on the portions rendered through Wiland? And the answer is, oh no, it can be done and is intended to be done on the full file. So, the goal is to identify names from the outside lists where we can identify those that are not going to perform as well. So one more similar question is, are these examples exclusively cold acquisition, or do these also include lapsed reactivation names? And Olivia, I wasn't familiar with these samples, but can you answer that question?
Definitely. Yeah, they are the mail files that have been back tested here are all cold names, because when the model is built, we actually remove current donors or lapsed donors from any files we receive. That's why our client success directors always ask for LOLs, because list of lists essentially, or key codes, in order to distinguish the prospects from the house names, because that influences the modeling, because obviously response rates are different. So these are purely prospects that it's been scored, but we have products and things that can be used to do optimization of lapsed as well. It's just that these particular illustrations we're showing are just code names. And same on house names.
I was gonna say, I'd always recommend keeping them separate and not scoring them together.
Yeah.
Here's another question. Could this be tested by just flagging the recommended to drop names, mailing and tracking them at the back end to prove that they indeed are low to no performance records? And the answer is, we could certainly do that. You can talk to your client success director and speak specifically about the best way to do that. There will be some costs involved. We will also recommend that we'll share with you all of the validation reports that went in to build that custom model for a particular file. And we'll certainly work with you in determining how best to analyze and test it. Next question, and I think we may have touched upon this a little bit. Is there any difference in this post-merge optimization product from what Wiland was doing with post-merge optimization in previous years? And the answer is, it's really a little bit of a different modeling technique. For those that have been using Wiland for optimization in the past, again, we recommend consulting with your individual client success director. But one of the things that the AI really does is it allows us to leverage these kind of combination variables that are created on the fly. And then there's unique binning that occurs that allows us to really create a more defined and predictive model. One of the things I like about the new solution is it frankly has more segments. So many of the old optimization models that we've used were built as 20 segment models. And all of these new PMO models are set at 40 segments, which I think gives us the ability to kind of more surgically cut with some level of certainty. And that's the big advantage of the new AI-driven models. So here's another question. Um, can you go through the cost information one more time? So Olivia, we kind of talked a little bit about that in the savings calculator, but can you just go through what
Yep.
the cost of doing post-merge is?
Absolutely. So again, there's never a cost at Wiland to build a model. Only when you utilize the intelligence from that model is there a cost. The cost per thousand is $40 a thousand or 4 cents a name, and it applies only to the names that are dropped. So you might pass a 2 million name file, but you only drop 50, 60,000. You'll just be paying on that 50, 60,000. It does have a $600 minimum. So somebody I saw in the chat had asked for if clients are mailing below $500,000 on average, is this still effective considering the cost of the model and the savings? Yes, the answer is because remember your cost at 4 cents a piece is minuscule as well as your list cost compared to all of the costs of your mailing. And because of the fact that we've mostly seen 10% on average, sometimes 6, sometimes 11, 12, that looks like it would be eligible for cutting based on the net per donor. You're really looking at even smaller files, probably in the 60 to 75,000 range, that are going to be able to still be optimized and hit the minimums, at least hit the minimum, and be paying essentially the same 4 cents a name. And because all the other cost metrics are still there, it still becomes cost effective. Obviously, the savings are smaller because the campaign was smaller, but still equally important to that organization as one that's mailing at 1 million.
All right, here's another question on timing. How much time does this process add to the schedule? How many days to drop, score, and fulfill? Jen, you want to talk about that? I think you mentioned that in your early remarks.
It's about 48 hours. If you're also going to put in balance as well, we probably need one more day. So I would say 3 business days from the time we receive the net files, as long as everything goes smoothly.
And I can add, actually, since Jen is new to Wiland,
Yes.
and I have processed many of those campaigns myself, it actually can be the same 48 hours because once we score the file and provide you with the rankings, we can also at the same time show you what replacement names are available. So those two are done hand in hand at the same time. So once you pull the trigger to drop one, we pull the trigger to ship the other. So they really are, they do walk hand in hand at the same time. So whether you're dropping, just pure dropping, or drop and replace, it's the same time frame. We can do it all within usually 48 hours.
So here's a question. Can you look back on a previous campaign without PMO at Wiland to help validate the potential impact for a new client, potential new client? So the answer is multifold here. One is our post-merge optimization solution can really only be applied to a client that's in the database cooperative because we leverage all of that transactional data when we're building these models. However, for a brand new client, what we would require is, their normal contribution to the co-op, but then in terms of mailing files, we would want at least 3 mail files to build a model. We could, in that process of building, we'll validate against the other samples, and then we'll be able to show you results. So the answer is, if you're a Wiland client, yes, we can build from scratch, but it does require 3 mail files and the responders as well. So I hope I answered that question right.
Right. Hey, Roger, I just saw another one that I want to piggyback on my last comment.
Sure.
It asked if you are using our post-merge optimize ask string product. Will this add an extra 48 hours or can it be run at the same time? It's run at the same time as drop versus drop and replace. So it does not add any time to your process.
Yeah.
So thanks for asking that.
Here's another one related to cost. How are your fees determined per record you put through the PMO? No, it's not a passing charge. It's just based on the number of dropped records. So it's 4 cents per dropped record is essentially what the cost is. Wow, a lot of questions. Thank you for all of these questions that you're putting in the chat.
There's a good one about selecting the names instead of dropping. Do you see that one?
No, I don't. Why don't you go ahead and read it?
Yeah, it says, will this ever be available as a select where similar orgs rent exchange each other's lists so we can select names for ABC lists that consistently score high? So Roger, you may have a fuller answer than I will, but I will say that we have had, and I've had when I was on client success, clients that would send us their exchange lists for optimization. So, you know, they had a big exchange balances, but just because they were free didn't mean they want to put them all in the mail. And so we were able to optimize those. Obviously, they were members of the co-op to begin with, and then be able to tell them which were the best exchange lists to put in, or similarly, which ones not to mail. And by default, the remainder are the ones they put in.
So here's another question. Is it productive and cost-worthy to optimize a merge file that is top-heavy with co-ops? And the answer is, it just depends. And again, you know, I think back to my earlier comment, we can build an optimization model custom to an individual client. We can run that, and if it doesn't make sense, if we can't make the case for it, we'll tell you, but there won't be any cost in developing the solution. So in the case of the person that asked this question, give us a try, let us try it. We'll never know until you know we actually process a file.
And there's no cost to process that file. So if we look at it and it isn't worth doing, then you walk away and there's no charge. Only when we ship the intelligence back do we actually charge. So it's worth it. It's worth a view.
Roger, did you see the question on co-targeting? Is this a service that Wiland offers as well? So yes,
I
it
missed
is.
that one.
Yeah.
Go ahead and answer that one.
You mentioned digital co-targeting is a service Wiland offers, and yes, it is. And actually running it, if we're looking to do a co-targeting campaign, getting that merge file in, running it, and then also getting that file ready for co-targeting is perfect timing. But yes, we do. And Jennifer Ingram runs that on our team.
So there are two questions that I kind of saw related here. One is, can a post-merge optimization model be used on lapse names? The answer is certainly yes, it can be. I would also preface that by saying that because this model is intended to find the bottom, and we have other types of models are used to and are geared to selecting the best names, it might be best to use us for the lapsed scoring, and then have us use a selection model as opposed to this one that's looking to drop the bottom. Another question came up is, could we use this optimization for house files? And I hadn't really considered that one. And Jen and Olivia, I'd love your thoughts on that as well. But theoretically, we could optimize any file you sent to us, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have in the past, when we've done house file optimizations, have built models on the campaign. So for example, we had one client who had a calendar package because that's their most expensive package. We built used prior calendar mail files to build a model to optimize their house file in order to tell them who was at the bottom and shouldn't be mailed. And this became especially important when the next year the cost of the calendar package went up 20%, and it definitely affected the profitability on the bottom of that file. We have not, since we've gone forward here with the PMO model, done any back tests to see would that model, having been used to do the same thing we did for this client with the calendar package, provide the same results. But I don't see why it wouldn't. And that's certainly a worthy test for a back test for us to do. And I'm putting it on the list because I think it probably does have value.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone had also asked, do we charge to build multiple models? And again, we don't. We'll build the model until we find the right one to provide the solution that you need. I think there was another question.
I said the one that, what are you building the models on? Did you see that one?
No,
No, go ahead and
It's what are you building the models on? Is it the client data modeled off of third-party data? And it's using the Wiland cooperative of transactional data. So as long as you're a Wiland participant, you have access to the transactional data, which is nonprofit, political, media subscribers. So it's across all industries, and that transactional data, which is what's used.
Right. Right. And somebody asked, so we don't have to provide anything other than the net file. That would be correct as long as we have the model built for you. So we obviously need client files, which in many cases, like I said, we've probably done dozens of models. I've probably over 50, at least 60 right now, using client files. So we would need those if we don't have them. But yes, once your model is built, then all you need is to send the net file, and it's a 48-hour process.
And either the list or the key codes, so we could break out the house file if it's not already broken out, the lapsed house.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you're not part of the co-op, you have to be a co-op member to use this service. So the question was, if you're not part of any co-op, is that an issue? So you have to be a Wiland member to use the PMO.
Yeah. And somebody also asked here, what's the percentage at the bottom? More often than not, it's about 10%. It varies by client. If it's been pre-optimized, interestingly enough, it can still be about 5% to 7%. If it's not been previously optimized, it's probably closer to 10%. And then goes over that if you're talking about no score names that didn't do well. There is one question that says, you mentioned some marketers are exploring less costly packages. Is there an ability to identify the right package for the right name? Well, I guess it depends. If you're saying, gosh, should I give them the blue package or the red package? That's not within the modeling scope. But if we're trying to do premium, non-premium, we can certainly, and we have done this actually for years, where we build those two different types of models. And then depending on the sequence you mail in, if you know that someone would respond as equally well to a mission-based package versus a premium package, you would want to select them off the model on the mission-based side first. Even if they populate high over in the premium-based model, you want to spend less money on them to acquire them and obviously not have them premium addicted, you'd want to prioritize your mission-based model over your premium model. So that possibility exists. That's not the same as optimizing. That's just doing selecting for names for prospect, but that is possible as well within our system.
Okay, I have gone from the bottom up towards the top, and I believe that we answered all the questions. I'll go back through after this. And if you've sent a question in, thank you. And I'll try to reach back out to you to make sure that we did answer your question. And I see a couple more things here at the very bottom. Are the AI models only available post-merge? So let me just clarify that we've been using AI and machine learning for about 10 years. So we have multiple modeling platforms that are driven using this technology. In this particular case with the post-merge optimization models, these models are really geared to like find the dregs, right? The very bottom, the best bottom or the worst names. And so if you're wanting to use Wiland for selection purposes to find new prospect audiences, there's already a good chance that we're using AI um, technology within that solution as well. But one of the things we noticed over as we were doing a lot of analysis is we had some clients that weren't using these AI powered models, and we were doing research on another project, and we started seeing, well, we actually think having 40 segments gives us more um, uh, surgical capability at the bottom, but it was actually also finding the worst bottom. And so this is where, if you're currently working with Wiland using optimization, consult with your individual client success director, and we'll make sure that we look at the current solution and any other solution we can put together to find the best optimization model. Okay, so I think we answered all the questions. So, Treg, I think you are going to put up a survey. So first, Jen and Olivia, thank you for presenting today. And if you found the information in this webinar valuable, we certainly appreciate your feedback. I believe there's going to be a link in the chat here shortly where you can access a survey. As I mentioned earlier, as a registered attendee, you'll be notified by mail when the webinar is available for viewing. Again, should be in about 24 hours. And please feel free to share that with your colleagues. And if you have any questions moving forward, there's an email address, info@wiland.com, that you could certainly send an email to. Or my best recommendation would be to talk directly with your client success director. And if you're not a member of the co-op, please contact us. We'd love to engage with you and show you the power of cooperative databases. So thank you very much and have a great afternoon.